This is Martha, me, right? This is Steve Liedell from Ambition Bank. We're here, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the closing cost. A lot of people have questions, and this is something that happens at the end of the transaction. So, Steve,
Yep.
Tell me what you think is important for the buyers to know about the closing cost.
That's usually one of the biggest questions is obviously what my closing costs are going to be, and really when they're purchasing a home, what is the total amount of money I'm going to need to close between the down payment and the closing costs. So the first thing to know is that there are programs out there with very low down payments. There are a lot of buyers that still think they have to put 20% down.
That's correct.
Which is just completely, false.
A myth.
Myth is right, an urban myth.
Yeah. So what would be the minimum that a buyer has to put down?
There are programs out there with no money down.
No money down.
Mass Housing now has a great program where they'll give you a first mortgage for a certain amount, like let's say 95% of the purchase price, and they'll give you down payment assistance for the remaining 5%. Now it's not free money, but it's a loan. It's a second mortgage loan with a 2% interest rate over 15 years to be able to provide the remaining money. So,
what about if they have a lousy credit?
Well.
So let's start with this. What is a bad credit if you want to buy a house? What would be the point of the break?
I would, minimum credit score is 620.
620. Okay,
But
so
you're
buyers out there,
Yeah.
if you don't have the 620, remember that still you could talk to Steve because he could help you and advise you of what to do to increase their credit.
Yes.
But let's start. You could buy a house with a 620 score.
You can. FHA is usually the best option when you have a lower credit score. They don't really punish you for having a lower credit score. The rate's going to be a little different, but not a big difference. And the monthly PMI that you have to pay, whether your credit score is 620 or 750, the monthly PMI is the same. So that's not going to change for you. With a conventional mortgage, if you get a Fannie or a Freddie mortgage, the PMI is much more expensive if your score is lower. So FHA usually is the best option for someone who has a lower credit score, although it can depend. Mass Housing is also one that will not charge you a higher rate if you meet their credit score requirements.
Okay.
So whether your score is 660 or 760, your rate is going to be the same. So that's a benefit if you have a lower credit score.
Okay, so we diverted here the conversation from the closing cost to
That's
the
it.
down payment. But let's talk then about the closing cost.
Closing costs are going to be, there's a couple things involved. There are the actual closing costs. Those are the fees that you pay in order to get a mortgage, which you don't get back. It is a cost of taking out a mortgage. It's going to vary a little bit depending upon the purchase price. The higher the purchase price,
The higher the closing cost?
the higher the closing costs because of the title insurance. The title insurance is based on the loan amounts, and so the higher the loan amount, the higher the fees. But in general, closing costs are going to be about $3,000 maybe to $3,500
In general?
in general.
Okay, so you talked that it was going to depend on the price of the property. So when it would be more, like what, 500?
Maybe 500 more.
Okay,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
the purchase price is 500 or more, perhaps the closing cost will be more.
It's a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of what we would call the closing costs, or basically what the borrowers need to bring to closing, is also what we would call the escrows. We are required to pay.
So what is an escrow?
An escrow is homeowners insurance, real estate taxes, and setting up the account to pay those. Included in your mortgage, we're going to pay your taxes and your homeowner's insurance for you, a high percentage of the time. So that means we have to hold your money for you in an account and pay the bills as they come due. So the first thing is, when you buy a house, you have to pay for your homeowner's insurance. And at closing, you have to show that you have a policy that's paid for the first year.
So that's something to do before the closing.
Yes.
Right?
Or
After the purchase and sale has been signed, after the application has been done, the next step would be for the buyers to look.
Yes.
Besides helping the lender,
Yes.
right? Being in constant communication with you, the next step would be to get a homeowner's insurance.
It is up to the buyer to decide which insurance agent they want to use for their homeowner's insurance. That's their decision. And then we have to make sure it has the required coverages in order to meet the requirements of the mortgage. And so that's something we're going to work with the homeowner on to make sure they have that set up at least a couple weeks before closing, because that's something that we have to prove that they have before we can get the okay to close. So we don't want to wait till the last minute. We want to get that squared away. But then again, we have to pay the first year's premium. So if the first year's premium is $1,000, that's part of the cost of, it's not a fee, but it's part of the cost of buying a home. So you have to take care of that. And then we have to set up the escrow account to pay your taxes and insurance. So, again, we have to set aside 4 or 5 months of taxes. We have to set aside preparing for the next year's homeowner's insurance. So that is part of the costs of buying a home that are included, we would call included in the closing costs. But I consider them separate because it's not a fee. It's just money we're holding for you. That's your money we're holding for you to pay taxes and insurance as they come due.
Okay, thank you so much, Steve. And remember, if you're a first-time home buyer or you're buying for a second or third time, my phone number is 774-288-9521. Or you also could reach out to Steve. He's in Envision Bank.
Yep, and my phone number is 508-272-4918, and I'm happy to answer any questions that people have about the process.
Okay, thank you.